Hello everybody, Raspberry Barrel here again to read another biography of Mewni. The biography that we'll be reading today is Faye, the Child Queen by VerifyTheArts on DeviantArt. Please forgive me if I stutter, hesitate, or mispronounce anything, and for any noises in the background. Let's begin. A mother lost to sea, a proper queen to never be, only 13 when the crown was given to thee, Faye, a child queen. Faye Butterfly. Born 1:09 a.m., death 2:08 a.m., 99 years. Reign 129 to 161 a.m., 32 years. Spouse Martialis Silverquake. Children Crescenta Butterfly. Born to Queen Andromeda and King Lowell Fisher in 1:09 a.m., Faye was the first and only child of the royal couple, born with light brown hair and purple eyes that she inherited from her father, and pink heart cheeks marks. To the surprise of her family, she had an extra mark on her left foot. Her birth was very stressful, with the newborn being underweight for the first few weeks after her birth. The queen was next to her daughter's bedside the whole time, fretting over Faye. While not alone in this huge castle, Faye felt abandoned by her mother due to the queen's constant travels away from home. The princess was under the sole care of her father, King Lowell, who was suffering greatly from stress and lack of sleep due to being the only one taking care of the kingdom. In 1:14 a.m., when Faye was 5 years old, her grandmother Miranda passed away in her sleep from old age. The young princess, who had never experienced death before in her short life, was inconsolable. Queen Andromeda was at home for the princess's birthday, which was only a week after the death of Miranda. The birthday party was still held, but the princess, who was grieving and way too shy to handle public attention, hid most of the night. It was evident that Faye had not been blessed with luck in higher life. The girl always managed to get herself hurt, from falling out of bed in her sleep to tripping down the stairs to tumbling over toys she forgot to pick up. In 1:16 a.m., Queen Andromeda and King Lowell Fisher went on their last voyage before they would announce something huge to the kingdom. What it was, Faye would not know for many years, but the young girl was terrified by the ocean and cried when her mother tried to get her to go aboard the ship. Not wanting to push it, the queen let Faye stay at home with her grandmother Cassiopeia. After 6 months of no letters or any contact with the kingdom, the royal family ship was found split in half and wrecked on some rocks outside of the kingdom's territory. It was unknown exactly what caused the ship to wreck, and it was too dangerous for anyone to investigate. The bodies of Queen Andromeda and King Lowell were never found, including the crew and the captain, that led to over 200 deaths. The death of their daughter was devastating. Even if they had been fighting in the recent years before her death, that would never stop a mother's love. Cassiopeia now had to grieve the loss of her child and son-in-law, while raising her granddaughter to one day take her place. During the reign of Phoebe the Unsure, many secret passages had been built in order to make it easier for any shy queen to get around without being noticed. They hadn't been used in many years due to the fact Phoebe hadn't kept them a secret. One day Faye found them by accident while playing when her flying disc hit a torch on the wall outside of her grandmother's study. A long passage that went down through the castle and separated into many secret rooms. Faye was never very brave, but took one step into the dusty passage, felt a cobweb on her face, and ran away screaming about spiders. Martialis Silverquake, a distant cousin of the family who was descended from Celeste Butterfly, came to visit the castle. He had been born with the ability to use magic, something that had not been seen before. All magic users in the family had been female so far and had been closely related to the ruling monarch. This instance led to Cassiopeia rethinking about magic worked, and if he had been able to use magic, well, then why not her own brothers? It might never have been fully found out why, but Martialis was training alongside the way in her magic studies and staying as a guest in the castle for an undetermined amount of time. The two did not get along at first. Faye was very introverted and preferred the peace she normally had between her and her grandmother, but Martialis was rowdy and a loud boy who constantly tried to joke with her and roughhouse. While never intentionally trying to aggravate her, it was obvious that Faye was happy on days he wasn't able to make it to their lessons. In 1:23 a.m., Faye's wand ceremony was celebrated on Cassiopeia passed down the wand for the second time in her life. As the wand transformed, Faye held the wand as far away from herself as she could. Though she had been training her whole life for this moment, she was terrified for the responsibility that was now on her. What if she proved to be unfit like the one before her? The kingdom's eyes were on her to be great, and she was determined to do better. Over time, the relationship between Martialis and Faye changed to something more of a friendly nature. No longer did they always bicker, but were able to have pleasant conversations with each other. Martialis was softer with her now, keeping his voice down and being respectful of her boundaries. Likewise, Faye was able to appreciate Martialis in ways she hadn't before. He was a king individual who went out of his way to help others. He had managed to befriend most everyone in the castle, regardless of their status, which made him popular. At the beginning of 1:25 a.m., a plague would come over the country, starting in the Silverquake dukedom and spreading. It was suspected that some of the fish that were being imported contained a toxin in it that was poisonous to humans. Contact with someone who had digested the toxin allowed it to spread to those around them. Even when the ports were closed off, many of the fishermen were becoming bedridden with the disease. That disease passed to their families and affected the dukedom, which would pass to others in the country that got seafood imports. Cassiopeia, who was a lover of seafood, would catch the disease herself when the castle cook served her infected fish. The queen was sick for many days in bed, healing slowly with the help of doctors who blended her different medicines, trying to find one that worked. Thankfully, she was able to continue her duties weeks later, and she found herself strength to get out of bed. In 1:29 a.m., Cassiopeia passed the crown down to Faye a week after the princess's 20th birthday. It was an emotional moment for them, but that wasn't the only event that day. Unknown to Faye, her grandmother had been helping Martialis with his proposal to the newly crowned monarch. The marriage of Queen Faye and King Martialis was a quiet event. Only their family were there to see the union, but in order to please her more extroverted husband, Faye planned a big after-party inside the castle that went on all night. It was said that was the first time Faye had ever drunk alcohol in her life, and Martialis learned his wife was quite the lightweight. The royals would give birth to their only child in their lifetime, Princess Crescenta, who was born with blonde hair and purple eyes like her own parents. Her cheek marks were in the form of red crescent moons. As the warmth and light of the new child brought into the world diminished, something new appeared out of the shadows. In the span of a week in the summer of 1:31 a.m., over 3 castle servants were found dead. One was found inside a broom closet by her senior. The other 2 were found stuffed underneath the individual beds of the servants' quarters. Fear spread into the castle. There were no suspects to the murders, and they feared that these might have been practiced kills for something bigger. Faye sent out an investigation to find the killer. No one was allowed to leave their rooms at night. More guards would be patrolling the halls, and baby Crescenta left her nursery to sleep inside her parents' chambers. Another week passed, another murder committed inside the castle. This time it was Haley, Faye's senior lady-in-waiting, that had been with her since she was a child. The queen was heartbroken at losing someone who had been like a mother to her. A funeral was held for all the victims, and Faye feared she might be next. The night after the funeral, there was a knock on the couple's bedroom door. Waking up, Faye went to see what was going on, only to find all of her guards outside the room dead asleep, and a note at her feet. Dear Queen Faye, it has been a pleasant time watching you squirm as the ones around you perish. Unfortunately, you are not getting too close to figuring out who I am, and as such, I think I'll be leaving for a while. Do not fret, for one day I shall return. True to their word, the next few weeks proved to be murder-free. Not a single person at the castle was harmed, but baby Crescenta did not return to her nursery, and the amount of guards stayed. There would be no chance taken. This period would prove to be a challenge for Faye. Not only had she not caught the murderer, but she had to prove to her people that she could protect them. Putting her fears to the back of her mind, Faye spent a lot of her time raising her daughter under her watchful eye. Her husband was taking care of the citizens who had been affected by the plague, even though it had been a long time since it had passed through the wand. The citizens were still suffering side effects. There was simply just not enough doctors to go around. In 5 a.m., Queen Faye passed her wand down to her daughter Crescenta, who was much more eager for the responsibility than she had been. Faye prayed to the gods that night that her daughter would live long and happy life. Knowing the burden of the crown, Faye refused to pass it down until she knew her daughter was ready, even if it meant she would have to wait for her daughter's 20th birthday. And so Princess Crescenta's birthday passed, and it passed until Crescenta was 30 years old. Finally, Faye, under the pressure from her husband, gave up her crown. In 1:36 a.m., Faye was awakened by a hand covering her nose and mouth. Her husband Martialis was tied up on the other side of the bed, unable to see the dark figure above her. Faye reached for a knife she had hidden under her pillow. Coming up from her side, she stabbed the assailant in the side and pushed them off of her. Guards busted into the room, and the sounds of the queen's screams. The murderer that had plagued her for all those years was no one else but one of the royal chefs. Not only had he tried to murder Faye, but he had poisoned her grandmother Cassiopeia in a failed murder attempt. He was arrested and sent to the dungeons for the rest of his life. Everything must come to an end. Faye knew that certainly, but nothing would prepare her for the heartbreak she would be forced to face in her lifetime. At only 45 years old, Queen Crescenta was found dead in her bed by her ladies-in-waiting. There had been no visible wounds on the queen, and her eyes were wide open and pure white. It was suspected she had been poisoned. Faye's screams of anguish filled the castle walls. Future queens remark that on the anniversary of Crescenta's death, you can still hear her mother's screams. A big funeral was held for Queen Cassiopeia, and she was buried in the royal crypts with the rest of the deceased monarchs. There was a year-long mourning period, and everyone in the castle wore black for the rest of the year. The rest of her life, Faye dressed in mourning robes. She suffered greatly from depression, and the only light in her life was her husband and her granddaughter Ophelia. She would live long enough to watch the birth of her great-great-grandchildren. In 2:08 a.m., Faye Butterfly passed away from old age in her sleep. She was 99 years old and had ruled for 32 consecutive years, making her the oldest queen so far, and the one who had the longest reign. She was buried next to her husband in the royal crypts alongside her parents' tomb. The murderer's note. And that was the biography of Faye the Child Queen by VerifyTheArts on DeviantArt. Please go check Verify out. They have all sorts of awesome art. Star Verses, Owl House, other stuff. Really great. You should check them out. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks, and bye-bye for now.